Good morning and welcome to this presentation. So, I'm sure that a lot of people here are quite familiar with the popularity of music therapy in recent times. Music therapy has almost become almost like a very fashionable fad now. If you look at even major hospitals in many parts of the world, including India, they are actually coming up with a lot of recordings, experiments, collaborations to see the potential of music as a complementary therapy for allopathy. Many times these kind of therapies are intuitively developed because intuitively we all know the power of music, the power of sound, the power of vibrations. Now, we know that music can do anything, but we don't know how it does anything. That means we have still not studied the mechanics of music too much. Only now recently there was a news item in the US where the NIH has actually sanctioned $5 million to study the mechanics behind the efficacy of music. So it has almost contrast that with the fact that music therapy has been there from at least 2-3 millennia that we know of in various cultures, Indian culture as well as African culture, and then subsequently in Western culture as well. And in US specifically, music therapy departments started getting popular even by 1930s, 40s. And there were departments. I think the first one was set up in Michigan, and then later on they had in other states like Kansas and other places. And now, of course, you can see almost every single university in the US probably has a music therapy department as well. And despite that happening, unless we study the mechanics behind music therapy, we will never be able to convert it into a proper science. It will still be relegated to a quasi-science and intuitive thing that various people will be trying various things in various contexts, and the results will never be standardized. It will never be something that we can prescribe with as much reliability as an allopathy medicine. Now, for example, many of the allopathy medicines, there are exceptions, of course, but most of them that you can actually see, suppose you have a headache, you can generally have some certain common formulas which can work across the board for many people. Similarly, if you want to have musical formulas that can work for people across the board, irrespective of whether you are from Africa or from India or from Ireland or from, say, South America, then we'll actually have made some kind of progress in this field. And that was the whole motivation behind the start of musopathy. A few years back, I discussed this field with a lot of scientists, even in 1980s, 90s and all that. And, even I visited some music therapy departments in the US because of my own personal interest. Because personally, I had seen a lot of benefits of music. Being a musician, I had seen a lot of benefits of music. Not only my music, in fact, I would say my music benefit was the least of it. But when I heard some great masters, when you play music, it's completely different mindset. But when you hear somebody else perform, or when you hear some other recording, then you have a different kind of mindset when you listen to that. So that sense, and of course there is enough literature in Indian culture, like you talk about Nada Yoga, you talk about this as a pursuit of pure sound, the perfect sound. And in fact, Indians had been extremely scientific in classifying not merely the sound that is heard, but also the unheard sound, Ahatanada and Anahatanada. This had been a classification that was done by Indians. So You can see some of these statements here are pretty obvious. Music has the power to de-stress, but it also has the power to distress. So it all depends on the kind of music, the kind of musician, and kind of our own mindset also. A lot of these things are based on your mindset also. And you do hear music, that moment you hear, you feel like tapping your feet or dancing to it, even standing up and dancing all around the room or whatever. And there are times when you feel very meditative, very calm, very quiet, and you want to just go into a trance. So various kinds of music is there. These are realities that we observe on everyday basis. And I have seen a lot of people choosing to hear music during their pregnancy, and there are people who also prefer to have music played during childbirth, and we also know music is also played during mourning or death. I don't know how many of you have read news items, stories of people actually committing suicides induced by certain types of concerts that they heard. There was a story out in many years back in Australia. This actually made news in India also, because it was fairly unknown to Indians at that time that people could actually do that, because this gentleman went and he heard a concert, and immediately he actually specified that he feels like he is on such a high that he feels like committing suicide, and he actually went and did that after hearing that concert. And then there was this famous group in Florida, which was also known for actually inducing people to get into a mindset where they would think that suicide is straight to moksha kind of a mindset. So studies have shown various kinds of results, benefits of music. You can see right from reducing stress and depression. You have studies which actually normalize BP and manage pain, of course. Pain alleviation, or that is something very much preferred for centuries, I think. And of course, sleep patterns. In India, we talk about ragas like Neelambari, which actually induce better sleep. And there are compositions, that are lullabies, which have been there in many, many cultures, including our own culture, where we also have as a part of the religious offering itself, we actually have songs to wake up God and put God to sleep and all these kind of things. So these lali songs and wake up songs are all very much part of our culture, even in a philosophical or spiritual sense. But you can see this concert listening increases lifespan. This was actually something that was very well mentioned by a lot of Indians before in our culture. But there have been studies now. What is happening? What's different here from what we intuitively know and what is happening here is there are studies to collect data on this to actually prove certain results which can actually make this scientifically valid. But whether all studies are valid is a question mark, because some of the studies are conducted by people with vested interests. Now, for example, if a coffee company is actually conducting a study that says coffee is good for your heart rate and everything, then of course, though I do like it, but I still have my cynical hat on when I read that kind of a story, depending on the source. So now this regular concert listening can increase lifespan was actually conducted by an organization in UK, which actually said that it was actually a concert organization which was doing it. It was a rock concert organization which actually funded that study. So their claim is that it can increase lifespan, and it doesn't mean that study should be dismissed. You can still take part of the study and then probably study it more. And then you have gyms full of music. You have, in fact, that was one thing that I was discussing with some friends in Anna University. After here, we have got Dr. Ramchand, who is one of the leading names in this entire field of medical industry, and the founder of MacGenome and several other outfits. So he had organized a similar talk by me a few months back, after which I actually had some discussion with some of the people who had attended it in Anna University about the efficacy of music in gym. Whether it is actually good for everyone or whether it's only good for certain types of people. Because certain other types of people may actually prefer silence when they exercise. Certain other people may be adversely affected by listening to high intensity music when they exercise, because their heart rate and everything will already be elevated when they're exercising. So whether it's definitely not the everyone's cup of tea. So, but we need to collect data and prove those kind of things. So we were actually discussing that. Hopefully we'll progress on that. So now you can see this is more rage in recent times, music for those with dementia. This is a very recent news, the one that you see, College of London, the University College of London, where they are actually having proper subjects respond better when they listen to songs that they heard in their childhoods. So when you have people whose memories are fading, if you actually start playing vintage music to them, their minds, actually their brain cells start responding to that. So these are scientific ways in which they prove that, I mean, you can easily do some neurological studies on this to prove how their neurons actually start responding, which part of their brain start responding to those kind of old songs. In fact, I read another couple of stories even today about this dementia, because even now, yesterday during Christmas, there was this university or hospital in US which started playing some old Christian songs which helped people with dementia cheer up immediately. So now let's actually listen to a couple of examples and see what you feel to what you listen to. And I'll just play only a couple of examples for now. Then you can tell me what your responses to those sounds are, and then we can. Or is the audio clear, or you want it louder? Want it louder? It's okay, not a problem, because the experiments of musopathy includes listening to the same thing in different decibel levels also. So you are okay. Okay, so let's take a random test from some of you as to what exactly you felt when you heard this very short clip. How about you in that orange shirt in the third row? Yeah. Okay. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, basically you are saying that the ascending notes had a kind of a sense of urgency in you. Okay. Now let's see how many of you agree with him on this. Can you please have a raise of hands? Wow. Okay. Okay. Now those who do not exactly agree with that but have other kind of responses, can you please raise your hands? Okay. So why don't you tell me what you felt? Mm-hmm. Okay. Anybody else has any other thoughts on this? Yes. Yeah. Okay. Second time it was unsettling. I mean, this is something that we Indian concert goers experience a lot in our actual day to day listening. When you are, especially in the season, uh, the same hall, same within about few seconds will keep having so many rise and ebbs in the volume levels when especially when the audio system is not working properly and all that. So you have so many different types of responses happening even right then. So now what we are trying to do is analyze and try to get a handle on what is exactly happening when. So that's good. All of you have made good points here. Let's play one more. Okay. So, before I start with asking you for your responses, please raise your hands if you recognize the artist in this. Okay, in that case, do not reveal the artist yet. Let's only see people who have not heard the artist actually respond objectively to this. You have not heard you didn't recognize the artist. Okay, can you please tell me what your response is? Okay, so sunrise, good. Anybody else has any other thoughts? You? Calmness. Okay. Any other? Folksy. Village like setting. Yes. Okay, so it's like walking alone in the forest. Okay. Not it. That's another experiment. I'll be coming to that. So, let's play another small clip also, and then. Okay. Previous recording is gone. Anybody else? No. See, I'm not even asking you to judge the music or the musicians here. Let's get only exactly what you're feeling. What does it do to your body or mind only is what is relevant here. Sorry? Okay. Battlefront. Okay. Threatening. Mm-hmm. Okay. That you are having that kind of feel. Okay. No. See, I'm trying to get us keep us only on objective footing here, because I know that some of the music may be foreign to us, but foreign to our tastes, foreign to our sense of aesthetics. I'll get to that point also. Actually, we will be covering that aspect of it. It's an important aspect. So now I want you to hear one more. See what you're imagining as you close your eyes. Wait. Okay. You first. Scary suspense. Anybody else? And you? Haunted. Okay. Fear and forensic investigation. Scary movie. Nice. That's fine. We need people to imagine things. Yes. Nobody felt live. Okay. Entering into a mystery place. Okay. So now I'm going to actually now, yeah. Okay. Okay. Fine. Sorry? It evokes fear. Okay. So now, you had so many thoughts of this. And so even without looking at any visuals, you are able to visualize things happening here, right? So now let's actually try and play this. So you can see what's happening here, right? If you saw this visual, some of the things that you imagine happened here. But some of the other things that were happening was like simple things like one box being shut down or a door being closed or opened is also appearing extremely scary because of the music that's happening behind. So very normal things can take a completely different dimension because of the music that's happening around you. If you have a different kind of music for the same thing, you won't feel the same amount of horror. Now you felt the horror even without actually seeing anything. And music conveyed that kind of a thing, right? Now I want to see if we can actually do one more small thing here. Yeah. Catch my point? What? Did you even feel like 1/10 of the horror that you felt when you didn't watch the video but only heard the music? Exactly. So what do we actually conclude with this small experiment? A lot of us may be thinking that eye is the most important organ in the body, or the most impactful organ, but it's many times it's the ears, which is like far more, it's exponentially more impactful organ in our body. And that's why music or the sounds have such a high impact in our whole psyche. And without the sound, many times even this there was no horror feeling in this. We just kept watching it like we would actually watch maybe a comedy show also without horror. So without the music happening there to give that background, sometimes the music will be suggestive. Even when that door shutting, if you give a different kind of music, you may actually be ready for something horrible to happen over there. It's a precursor to something horrible that's going to happen in the visual also. So that's a kind of power. So music not only can impact you when you are hearing it, it can sort of lead you on. It can actually lead you to certain behavioral patterns, certain kinds of responses that you are going to expect something. And all this is the reason why the power of sound has to be studied far more. It has to be tapped far more. It has to be analyzed far more for us to actually make more good use of that power of sound for well-being, actually. And that's what this topic is about. That's the reason that this is a significant topic. And today, of course, there is a lot of interest in this. So you can also see other studies. This was today's Indian Express. I don't know how many of you have seen today's Indian Express, which carried this news that this university in Orissa is now doing music therapy for its patients. And this is again today's news. The one in Nevada, USA, Reno. Again, if you go and see the links, you'll see that people are really taking a lot of interest in finding active solutions for health using music. This experiment we just covered now. And now we go on to see what exactly is the difference between music therapy in the conventional sense of the term versus musopathy. So it's pretty clear from whatever I said before that music therapy has traditionally been focused on the available cultures of the region. Now, I know, I'm sure some of you would remember the news stories happening in around 1980s, where we had something called the Raga Research Center, which was founded by violin maestro Kunnakudi Vaidyanathan, during the Jayalalitha government, at which time, or MGR government, at which time they started studying certain ragas and started coming up with results. Now, for example, there was this study which I still remember, that news item that said that cows which listen to Anand Bhairavi can produce more milk. Okay. Even at that time, I was probably in my mid-teens or late teens at that time, but even then I wondered, wow, if it can produce more milk with Anand Bhairavi, what can it do if it is the parent raga like Karagara Priya or Nata Bhairavi? Or whatever happens when the cow listens to something very similar, like say Hussaini or Mukhari or Riti Gaula or Bhairavi. Why not those ragas? So you can see where I'm going with this. So basically, why Anand Bhairavi? Were other ragas even considered in that particular study? Were similar ragas considered, or were contrasting ragas considered? And what was the metrics of that experiment? How did they actually come to a conclusion like that cows can produce more milk if they just heard Anand Bhairavi? Now, was it only limited to cows in Madras or cows in Mylapore which have grown up listening to Carnatic music? Or who did even work in some place like say Perambur or Tambaram or Avadi where there are not so many sabhas? Or what about Jersey cows in US, or some other cows in some other part of the world, in Europe or some other place? So you see how much is left untried in that experiment, but still big statements are made. Same thing in US. They actually did an experiment with Mozart's music in University of San Diego some years back. And fine, the person who did the experiment might have loved Western classical clearly, or they might have especially loved Mozart. And they came to this conclusion that students who listen to Mozart actually fare better than others in exams. Okay. Now, why would students who heard Mozart only fare better? What about some of the other composers? There are fantastic composers. Mozart is a genius. This is not to question him or to question the greatness of Anand Bhairavi, by the way. I like Anand Bhairavi myself. But the point is, why not something else? How did they come to the conclusion is not clear. It was not clear even in the 80s when the news story came out. I think probably this was late 80s, early 90s kind of thing. So when you have this kind of results that are widely publicized, then the thinking person's antenna goes up and you start seeing what part of it, what composition of Mozart or which segment of Mozart did they actually experiment on. And if they experimented on a particular segment of Mozart, then are there similar segments of other Western composers? If it's a fast segment, then there should be so many allegro segments by so many composers. You could try all of them and then see whether there is something distinguishing. If that's not the case, then what is it? Is it the tempo? Is it the volume levels of that piece? Now, some of you said that volume is disturbing in a particular decibel level, right? And then you start seeing why this is happening. And then in the West, of course, as I said, Mozart. African music has traditionally experimented a lot with native percussion. African drums have a therapeutic effect on certain types of people when you actually keep listening to the way in which those rhythms are played. They have the syncopation between so many different artists, and that can have a very therapeutic feel, of course. But now, would students in India who listen to Mozart do very well in exams too? Suppose we actually took Mozart to, say, some place like Tiruvanikavil, one school there, and we actually played Mozart to them every day for about 3 weeks just before the exams. Will they actually start doing better with their results? No, we never know. See, this thing is, we just don't know. We don't know enough. And unless we play to the same students, different composers over a period of time, how are we ever going to know? There is no way to standardize this experiment. Or suppose you take 20 different schools and play 20 different composers, same kind of segments from different composers, and you come and then see, okay, this one did better than this. But even then, that result is not going to be very, very clear because that sample size is still not enough to actually come to a serious conclusion in a very scientific manner. So unless you have actually yardsticks which can still be minimized for you to actually come up with proper results. If this is too wide a net, you have like literally thousands of composers, thousands of music samples around for you to actually come to a statement like this. So, this is all very clear here. Now, if you take raga music also, why does Neelambari induce sleep? Is it because the general compositions are in slightly slower tempo many times? It's not like a racy raga. So, it's also the way சில பேருக்கு வந்து நீலாம்பரியே தேவையில்லை, எக்ஸாம் புக் எடுத்ததுனால தூக்கம் வந்துடும். அது நிறைய பேர் இருக்கா, அது ஆஃப்கோர்ஸ். இன்னும் சில பேருக்கு வந்து கச்சேரி வந்தால் தான் ஹைப்பர் ஆக்டிவிட்டி வித் த செல்ஃபோனே ஸ்டார்ட் ஆகுது. யூ ஹாவ் போத் ஹேப்பனிங். ஸோ நவ் ஆஸ் ஐ எம் கம்மிங் டு த மெயின் பாயிண்ட் ஹியர், இட் இஸ் தட் musopathy has to be a lot more scientific, and that's what we are really looking at. And unless we eliminate region, religion and culture in this way in which we actually study things, it's not going to be easy. Now, I'll address a question that some of you mentioned, which is actually relevant. Culture does play a role in the therapeutic field that we may have. In fact, especially with dementia and some of these other things, and also with the general field that we have. So that is in fact something that even the American Medical Association had also reached that conclusion, that culture has a say in the way we respond to music. Okay. And that is also true for us when we look at things. Now, genetically, we have almost been programmed to appreciate water bodies, mountains, certain kinds of scenes that we see. We tend to respond like that for almost like 100,000 years. There are studies which show that we have genetically been modified to respond to certain types of visuals also. So definitely orally, the culture that we are exposed to has a definite role in certain parts. So also language. இப்போ நிறைய பேருக்கு வந்து தமிழ் பாட்டு கேட்டதுன்னா தனி ஒரு ஃபீல் வரும் தமிழியன்ஸுக்கு. Similarly, if you go to Karnataka, it's the Kannada songs. So it's a kind of different feel that we all have. But to what extent can we actually do that as a study? Now that means music therapy itself will become only limited to a particular thing. It will never get standardized. So we need to also do studies which are beyond culture. And then we have to look at possibilities to see whether we can actually see the power of sound based down on its fundamental properties and see whether the results can be achieved. Yes. Now, for example, familiarity is one part, but see, now you may be familiar with multiple. I'm sure that many people in this hall have heard Carnatic, also rock, film music and all that, but still culturally they may gravitate towards certain types of music, right? Similarly, somebody who is a fan of rock music might have heard some Carnatic or Hindustani or Japanese music or something also, but he may prefer that. So your cultural preferences, all these things also come into play actually. In some cases, to a certain extent, that is valid. Now, for example, if you really look at many people, they are swayed by words. Okay? Oh, this guy is such a dirty guy, Rama. This guy knows no music or Rama. If you say in a language that the people don't understand, they only understand the word Rama in this. They may think each time they will hear the word Rama, they'll be doing Rama, Rama, Rama. They won't even know what is actually said in the concert, in the composition. I've seen this happen firsthand. Shri Rama Vararagalaya. Vararagalaya. They don't know what Tyagaraja said in that because they don't know the language. What Tyagaraja is saying, all these musicians know nothing about music. They are pretenders. They say that they know Swarajati, Murchana, Bhedam and everything, but they know nothing, but they are just blabbering that they know everything. And only thing, because the word Rama comes into that, everybody is thinking, what a great bhakti song this is. It's nothing to do with that. It's a critique of the fellow musicians. Something that Mozart also felt. He felt that there are so many mediocre people who are being celebrated, and his genius was not the thing. But Tyagaraja or many of these composers, when they create this kind of compositions, because of a word or two, people relate to that. So that has an impact on the psyche of the listener. But we are not dealing with that. What we are trying to do is we are trying to see what is common for all the systems in the world and how we can study them in a way so that a cure that is actually valid for India should also be valid for Africa or Greenland or anywhere. And otherwise, the field won't develop. And it can be now boiled down to melody, rhythm, dynamics, tempo. These are all common for most of the systems in the world. Most of the systems will have these things. There are certain systems which have harmony, of course, but we are not going to deal with that for the time being. And then, of course, when you say dynamics, the decibel levels. That's very, very important. And then if you look at the variable factors, which is going to be the theme, the style, mood, ornamentation, lyrics, upbeat, tranquil, mix, language, all these things also come into that. And that's what Musopathy will focus on, to study the non-specific music, which is not based only on one culture or something. And then, of course, this was relevant to a talk which I presented in Mag Genome for some time. But I'll just go slightly further and then see, just brief you. I don't want to get too technical at this stage. So I will just tell you a little bit about this various experiments that were conducted in this 528 hertz. 528 hertz அப்படின்றது for Carnatic listeners or music listeners, if you want to translate it to, it is like the middle level C that you will see. Most of the male vocalists, sitar, guitar, piano on the C, the main C is actually about 524 hertz actually. But somehow the experiments were done in 528, which is actually 4 hertz higher than the exact one. But somehow this 528 became a very big fad in many parts of the world. You can go see some literature. A lot of tall claims are made about 528. They say that it's there in so many different... See, look at this whole thing. It's called the love or miracle frequency. It's claimed to be present in everything from chlorophyll to human DNA, rainbow and the sun. Okay. So now, these are not there in very reputed journals. These claims are not there in very reputed journals. So I do not place too much credence on this. But there was an experiment that was done in Japan using this 528, which actually came up with certain results. But that sample size, in at least my reckoning, is too small. It was only done with 9 people. So I don't know whether that is considered a serious sample size to come up with a huge conclusion like this. When you say cortisol levels significantly decreased, or chromogranin A tended to decrease, oxytocin significantly increased based on salivary biomarkers of stress and all that. So whether 9 is a serious number is something that I would rather ask some. It's not, right? You need much bigger sample size. Yeah, but this was done in Japan by a bunch of scholars working with a hospital. Well, yeah, we need a lot of different types of studies to actually validate that, right? It cannot just be with one type of base study, and then you cannot make that kind of claim still. Yeah. This is not sufficient, and so you need a lot more work to happen. Right. I agree. And also, since it was also done only with one region, and so we need to see whether other genetics come into play, other regions. So many other things have to be analyzed. But it sort of gives a little bit of insight into that particular frequency. At least we probably may open the door and see whether more studies can be conducted. Other types of more rigorous studies with larger samples sizes can be conducted with proper stats gathered on that. In more countries, yes. That's what I'm saying. So culture also may play a role. That's precisely. I agree. I quite agree with that, which is why I'm trying to say, but at least I like one particular part of this, at least that this 528 is not like based, it's not just only the domain of any one single culture. It sort of completely de-regionalizes, de-religionizes and deculturalizes that particular experiment. So now if we try it out on various sample age groups, sample sizes, various temperaments and everything in different countries, then we'll be able to come up with slightly more. So this is the way in which things can probably be done, but with more rigor, of course. But now there are certain other intuitive things. If you look at the tempo, intuitively we know that slower tempo may make us more tranquil or more relaxed or more sleepy also, passive and all that. Faster tempo can give us a lot more different types of energy feel because of the way we respond to it. This is an intuitive thing. Now, which is why the examples that I played for you today, some of them are actually samples which are part of the experiment that's ongoing now. We are trying to actually have proper studies with the same kind of music in different speeds, different tempos, where people are exposed to the same segment, 20% faster, even 40% faster or slower, and then we are going to see how that is going to actually impact them. Similarly, different dynamics, volume levels. When you hear very loud music, you start feeling restless, or you feel even irritated, aggressive, and so many other things. Whereas when you start hearing something very soft, then you start feeling a little more relaxed. But if it gets too soft, then you'll start getting anxious because you're not able to catch everything. Then you may start actually getting stress again going up. So these things happen because when we even strain, that's what I think, now recent studies are showing that people who are growing deaf also tend to increase their stress levels much more because they're hearing less, and then that has an impact on their nervous system and the rest of the body system as well. Now look at this. The best music itself, you can be hearing your favorite artist in your favorite auditorium, but if that day's audio is not good, you will still not be satisfied, because if the music is too loud or something, you will wonder whatever happened to them, and the artist on stage may still not be able to hear themselves. All this is very beautiful experiments that you can just conduct during the rest of the season itself. Okay, many of you, when you're going out to concerts, you can observe a lot of these things happening. And the artists won't be hearing themselves, so they'll be asking for more volume. You may love the artist, but be wondering why the hell is he still asking for more volume when it's already so loud. And if you actually were sitting in one part of the auditorium versus another part of the auditorium, you will end up hearing with different type of the same music, because the speakers are not evenly distributed in many of our auditoriums, right? So all these things. Now, You also know that combination of notes have a very important role to play, irrespective of culture. Now, typically, if you look at certain combination of notes, Rega mada ni da ni ma ni da ma ga da ma ga re ga re sa da ni sa will have a different kind of impact. Then ga ma ga re sa ni da re ga pa ma ga ne re sa ni da re ga ma da pa ma ga re ni ga re sa ni ga ma da pa ga re sa kind of combination. So I am minimizing the gamakam aspect of this, but because when you start coming into culture specific things, each genre of music may have a different type of ornamentation that is preferred. In the West, you may have tremolo or trill or vibrato and all that. Here, you may have the oscillations in Carnatic. In Hindustani, you may have glides. Means different kind of effect. Then, kind of thing. So, all this, without that, you have the combination of notes. The minor notes tend to generally have a different kind of feel than the major notes. That much is fairly universal, except when there are oscillations involved. Because when you have oscillations, you're not talking about notes, you're actually talking about limits of frequencies. That's why a lot of the way in which Carnatic music notes are studied itself is quite wrong, in my opinion, because they are not even aware of the fact that they are not studying notes. They are actually studying limits of oscillations and frequencies. So many of the theory books which have been there for centuries have missed out that fact, and because they classify that the note itself is somewhere else. You can never actually give one frequency to a moving note. It's like the Heisenberg's uncertainty principle, So that's a very, very important aspect to remember. So when you have oscillations coming in, all the rules of minor notes and major notes vanish. Because when you have Todi, then you're only having Mari. That high re is only being heard over there, not which is very different. So, without that, if you just listen to frequencies. So, in other words, musopathy actually relies on combination of notes for the study and the decibel levels and the tempo of music. And these are very important aspects. And as I said here, Western classical jazz, etc., will also use chords and counterpoints. As somebody made that observation, when you have chords and counterpoints, you have different focus shifting, because some people may actually tend to focus on the chords that are being heard. Some people may focus on the main melody that's being heard. Some instruments may dominate within that. And so you may have so many other responses happening inside your brain that need to be much more dynamically studied. And so to keep the study simple, we should try and do it without too much of harmony, at least at the beginning stage of this musopathy. Not most of the genres of music. And as far as we are concerned, we are trying to get non-cultural, non-regional, non-region specific, right? So when we create the music, so music is being created for the studies as we speak. In fact, I'll talk about the experiment that's happening right now in some places. So we are actually testing with live samples. We are doing studies by creating music which is neutral, which is not just only based on one this thing. Sorry? It's still music, because music is still regular vibrations as opposed to just general tapping of a table or something. So unless that is rhythmic, okay. So we are still talking about music, but it's fairly neutral type of music. And now another very important role that I personally have been trying to persuade some of the universities to study is the non-alignment stress. If you are having two people or two instruments, two bodies of music producing sources, producing the same frequency, say one is producing 528 and other is tuned to say 524, which is slightly not out of sync, out of alignment. Then you keep listening to both of them simultaneously, you will start developing a stress in your body. இது ரெண்டு பேர் ஸ்ருதி சேராமல் பாடித்தனால நம்ம வந்து டியூவோலே கேட்டதுனால உங்களுக்கு அது தெரியும். இல்லை ஒரே ஆர்டிஸ்ட் வந்து தம்பூரால் ஸ்ருதியை சேராமல் பாடினதுன்னா உங்களுக்கு தெரிஞ்சிடும். இல்லை வயலின் வந்து ஸ்ருதி சேராமல் இருந்ததுனால உங்களுக்கு தெரிஞ்சிடும். இது டெய்லி நம்ம கேட்கக்கூடிய ஒரு ரெகுலர் ஃபினாமினன். But that is called the non-alignment stress, because they are not about suddenly some part of the concert, when they actually align, you will feel completely relaxed, kind of a feel, right? This happens. When you are sitting at your home and then you are tuning a string instrument like the violin or the tambura or whatever it is, and when they are out of stress, your body will have that stress as you are tuning. Until it is actually tuned properly, your body will have stress. I mean, if you have jnanam basically. But if you don't have jnanam also, if you actually see people who listen to it even without actual technical knowledge of the system, will still not feel relaxed unless it's in sync. They may not know what is wrong with it, but there will be something that is missing, something that is not giving them that joy, something that is not actually relaxing their systems. So that is an aspect that has to be studied in depth. If you study that in depth, and if there are studies which can actually prove the physical health, wellness benefits of alignment, then I think music itself will rise in standard. That will be a good side effect for the side benefit for the whole system of Carnatic music also. Artists will start making that effort more. If you see some of the age span of high quality musicians, who have fairly, unless they have developed other physical habits or some other things, they generally lived long. Whoever was spending a lot of time relaxing themselves with proper sound and their, the audio, the oral systems would be far more relaxed, and then consequently their neural systems, and then everything happens from there, right? In your heart rate, every single thing is governed by the way your brain is sending signals. So in that sense, many artists, if you look at, I actually did this experiment along with a few students, age span of musicians in various genres. So we collected some data, and typically even in the Western classical musicians have tended to live very long. The conductors have lived pretty long, 80s, 90s. Similarly, our system also, if you look at Carnatic Hindustani artists, many of them easily crossed 70, upper 70s and lived till 90 plus. So the music itself has had that thing. Whereas certain other systems, the life age expectancy is pretty low. If you look at pop music and rock music and all that, the lifespan is average age in which many of them die is probably around in their 40s to 50s also sometimes. So different systems of music have that kind of an impact on the way, and constant exposure also, right? It's not just you are just there for a couple of hours. You are practicing that whole system. That means by definition certain music systems are much louder than the others, so you're continuously exposing yourself to that. In my childhood, near my house there used to be this grinding mill, where people would grind the rice into some Mav mill, so the flour mills basically. So that noise would be huge, and it will also be in a high frequency, high decibel. So Whenever I used to pass that shop, I used to actually literally jog in my childhood, intuitively. Because now if I imagine how that guy would have been in that same shop doing this as a profession for years together. If you look at this thing, if somebody does a brain study of such people, then you will have a lot more data actually collected on what kind of impact that thing has. And similarly, today the equivalent is people who are driving these fancy cars but having their earphones and then full blast, like 100% volume in that thing. But that headphone volume actually carries about 3-4 cars away into my car, despite my glasses being up in some traffic light. I'll be wondering where this is coming from. Then 4 cars down the lane, there'll be one guy playing some music over there. So that exposure also needs to be studied. It has to be analyzed a lot, and the downsides of that have to be brought out so that more people will then start listening to their correct optimal levels. Yeah, that is why when you do this kind of studies, we have to really set proper protocols. We have to choose the correct sample, this thing, so that now, for example, in this study that we are doing now currently, we are actually trying to choose people with different age groups, but at the same time without any kind of medication or habits and those kind of things. So you need to also see, now if you are going to do over a period of time, then you also have to see whether for example, somebody just has won the Nobel Prize, and then you are going and playing all poignant songs to that person is not going to feel any kind of empathy towards the music that's being produced over there. If you play a Shubhabantu or Ali with such a soulful way in which you yourself are crying, but that guy may not even be feeling like any crying at all, right? So their mindset also has a role. So we'll have to have a proper questionnaire where we set what kind of things happened in your life in the last 3-4 days or something that can affect the hormone responses. So anyway, so I think we have covered just a glimpse of this. We are doing all these studies. Hopefully, we'll be coming up with more results and more stats for all of you to.
What about the climate? Changing
That's
climate. The basic thing.
Changing climate?
Making the study of keeping yourself.
Are you saying that inside the experimental room or in general the planet's climate crisis?
Where the climate system. Suppose you are in a tropical climate, or suppose you are in that, we cannot stand it. That is our food very well. During the winter season, people go into dementia and all those things. How
Okay.
we are going to adjust them?
No, the study, as far as this study is concerned, it is going to be studying only parameters to this. Then those things are going to be affecting their general lifestyle anyway, right? So when you do the sample, when you are doing the sample here.
See, if I go to France, how I used to feel, I don't.
Okay, tell
Same
me.
period here.
Tell me.
It is in Margadi here what I feel. Same person, same culture, whatever it is, my culture doesn't change when I go to France. But the extreme climate, when I see that one, how we are going to take it? That's the basic things every one of us used to have.
The depression.
See, you feeling itself, you will be.
Okay, how many of you actually start feeling depressed when it rains? Sorry? Okay. Climatic conditions, yeah.
Ancient music system, the therapy with respect to that, I'm currently doing a PhD in music therapy. Done that really. It's a comparative study of Indian traditional music therapy and modern music therapy. Now, music old Hindustani or Indian music, ragas are all season based. Adu climatic condition based and human. Sorry. And secondly, neural system பார்த்தா everybody will be in a low air. And as the day progresses, become more bubbly. இதெல்லாம் வந்து டியூனல் சேஞ்சஸ் ராக ரசங்களும் இதுவும் சேரும்போது some ragas are more effective because of the timing which is then related to sound and mood and the
Okay. Yeah, I'll come one by one. This is very good that it is interactive. So now, coming to you, the responses to music based on the ancient time theory. We had a conference in Bombay by the Indian Musicological Society and NCPA, where we had both Carnatic and Hindustani musicians who discussed this. So it will be good for you to update yourself on some of these things. And the conclusion that was suggested by even Hindustani artists who are far more rigorous about the time theory with respect to choosing the ragas. It's all fine when we are close to nature. When music was outdoors, when we were all outdoors more. So if you actually, then you even saw the difference between morning and evening. Here, sitting here, you don't even know what time it is. Okay? So then what are you going to talk about your response to the music? When you're sitting here in the evening listening to a morning raga, are you going to say that your response is like morning or your response is like evening?
the body will temperature will change depending on
Body clock never accepts. Body clock is different. It doesn't accept.
That is why I'm saying. So in other words, the music that you listen to supersedes the physical reality.
Exactly.
Right? Okay, you. Please, yeah, I'm listening.
So that's why I said body clock. It's not external clock I'm not mentioning. I said body clock.
Okay, so body clock, what?
No, that's what, that doesn't come. That's what I'm saying. I'm saying personally, I feel.
You feel what?
I am doing the experiment myself, how I feel in different types of them. So then I can see the difference.
No, I didn't.
So I'm telling.
Are you saying that your body clock supersedes the external reality? Or you are saying that, so your body clock supersedes?
That's why it doesn't feel as if it's inside. This raga, this suits me like that. But every body clock is different. No, that's why I said body clock. Each one is different. That's it. Cannot.
No, please enlighten me a little more on what you are trying to actually say.
No, when you are telling, when we are in a place, we doesn't know outside is sun or night, doesn't make any difference. I am telling, okay, body clock, it knows which is there, what is there. It makes a difference. That's the point I want to make.
So, no.
Relax means it's not conditioned. Therapy is for not the purpose. It should be for ever. It's not for a particular time frame.
No. Okay. Actually, now some of the experiments are happening in Charusat University in Gujarat, and there are other people who are in dialogues. I'm in also dialogue with Dr. Ramchand here. In fact, why don't you actually tell me your views on what this gentleman has said? Yeah. Even mic irka ji? Extra mic irka. Why don't you? Here. No. Yeah. Use this mic, ji.
I'm basically a scientist and drug discovery scientist, and we look everything very, very rationally because the drug discovery is extremely complex and it's not easy to develop. And we have recently developed one first time for a phase 1 trial, intravitreal injection, and that's the background. We invited Mr. Ravikiran and we gave a fantastic talk because I am very critical about, for example, homeopathy, the way which Ayurvedic drugs are developed. I'm not telling it is effective or something. And I found that whatever he talked, highly scientific. And that's the reason I again invited him when an Australian group came. And the Australian group, which is working on neuroscience, and after having a discussion, they found that it is super, the way which he is planning and thinking about. Now, when you are conducting any experiment, there will be in a controlled conditions only, because otherwise hundreds and hundreds of questions will be coming. Let's say that, we know that various types of energy. Two main energies. One is electromagnetic radiation, which is cosmic, or gamma rays, X-rays, ultraviolet, visible, microwave, radio waves, etc. And we all know that this has an effect. That effect is by a photon, which is moving photon, and how interacts with the body's cellular system. So everybody knows about that. The same way, sound is a different type of energy which actually vibrates the object. For example, we know that it vibrates the eardrum, but we currently do not know whether how it is working with the skin or other cellular function, but at least we know that much. Now, the major thing what we can measure is that what is called phenotypic changes. For example, blood pressure, or EEG, EKG, ECG, these type of things, music definitely changes. If this is to be changed, then certain biochemical parameters, an example cortisol or corticosteroid hormone, many cytokines, then neurotransmitters like tyrosine, dopamine, these type of things can be easily measured in the blood or in the saliva and can be done. Now, what we discussed is that the first is beyond doubt proof. For example, if your stress level has to go down, your blood pressure has to go down, then the cortisol level has to go down, corticosteroid levels. If this has to be gone down, then you'll have to prove under a controlled condition. Now, the first thing is that we can just take any music in a controlled condition. Maybe 30, 40 people should be in one condition, the other one will be in another condition, and take the blood and prove beyond doubt that this is happening. Then you can go backwards and study further. This is what we discussed, and we also told that, we will be able to help in doing either here or in Australia. Of course, you are already in Charusat. I am also a professor over there, Charusat University. So this is what I feel. So any experiment what we are conducting, there should be a controlled condition, and make sure what is the first thing is that proof of concept, whether it is really working or not. In this case, what I have to feel is that maybe any kind of music has to be taken and see that whether it is affecting you or not. This is what I feel. So whatever we are talking at this point, whether circadian rhythm or the climate, we can discuss at a later period. First is that, the first thing has to be proved. That is the scientific way to go about. Otherwise, what will happen is that, many discussions will come. Nothing will work out.
I think what the way he has put it is gives a better idea that the whole thing is more robust and rigorous kind of setup, where the concept of a design of experiments is there is a control group, there are clearly defined input variables, clearly defined output variables. That gives a much. That's exactly what we are doing in Gujarat also, and I've been visiting Charusat for a bunch of times on this. We are still not sharing everything because the results are they'll be shared only once we actually get to certain stage.
This is all, the terms used are, this is predominantly the modern music therapy and the principles. Indian music therapy, there is a mention in Sangeeta Kalpadrama, he talks about chakras and the petals. These petals denote emotion. So you can push the emphasis on the petals, and thereby the emotional state.
இல்லை எனக்கு அதில் ரொம்ப ரெஸ்பெக்ட் உண்டு, பட் எனக்கு அந்த சப்ஜெக்ட் அவ்வளோ தெரியாது. And if there are real experts in that field who can work with the same rigor as, say, proper scientific community will accept throughout the world, abdina, I'm willing to work with them. The important thing is whatever I like to work on should be non-cultural culture specific or region specific for it to really be effective throughout the world. And that is very important for us. Otherwise, there is nothing wrong. Now, for example, if somebody really feels, I have actually given my music to a lot of autistic kids. I teach autistic children. I worked with them. And there are many people who come to me for music. So on a case-by-case basis, I give intuitively what I think is good for them in a particular situation. But that is still not something that I can prescribe across the board, right? So, Yanik, in the chakras pati, I need to learn a lot, and there has to be proper experts who will collaborate with me. And we should also include neuroscientists and other people who will collate what we are doing with actual experiments. We need biostats to actually come through with the proper documentation of these intuitive thoughts. நான் எதுவுமே சொல்லலை because I don't know enough about the subject. But at the same time, see, there are people who there are rooms for counterclaims in that kind of a situation. So my only focus is to try to get to a situation where we first satisfy the most rigorous standards that is found in, say, allopathy. Unless we have that kind of same rigor in our approach, only vigor won't help.
About your methodology, what do you actually play for them? You said you remove all the connotations. So, end up play for them.
எதுல?
To the listener, what do you actually play?
No, we are creating music more based on general sounds, not using any specific instrument. Because if it's இல்லை இப்போதைக்கு இன்ஸ்ட்ருமெண்ட்ஸ் யூஸ் பண்ணி பட் ஆனால் digitized mostly rather than actual. See, now, because now if you hear the same music on violin versus the same music on, say, Shanai or flute or Nadaswaram or something, your responses are going to be different. So ஓரளவுக்கு எவ்வளோ தூரத்துக்கு முடியுமே we are trying to keep it as neutral as possible. Keyboard type la, but see, there are times when you may use other instruments also, but the point that we are trying to do is to not make it very cultural specific. அப்படின்றது நான் இப்போ வந்து I can't test it on some Irish person at this stage. So on the type of trying to keep it neutral.
Got up on the bed on the wrong side, that anything could be happening. So the state of the mind, on the receiver side, is such a key factor in how that music affects the person.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
Every hour, every minute, that is changing.
That is why the questionnaire has to be very, very well drafted. You need to.
Mind changes every hour, right? I mean, it's not much. So how do you factor that into the research?
See, that is why we are coming up with various kind of protocols that will try and eliminate some of the variables. So எவ்வளோ தூரத்துக்கு முடியுமோ ஸ்டாண்டர்டைஸ் பண்ணி கொஸ்டினேட் பண்ணுவோம். அதுக்கப்புறம் there is going to be some that is why biostats are there. They'll come up with this, why this, how much of variability and all these things they'll have to actually specify, right? They'll come up with that. That's why I said about this Nobel Prize versus Shubhabandhu or early experiment. எனக்கு இது நிறைய தூரம் நடந்திருக்கு. நல்ல ஆர்டிஸ்ட் இருக்கலாம், எல்லாமே பண்ணிட்டு இருக்கலாம், பட் ஆனால் நம்ம ஸ்டேட் ஆஃப் மைண்டுக்கு தகுந்த நம்ம ரிசீவ் பண்ணுவோம். ஸோ ஐ திங்க் we have another event happening here, so I'll just take only one final question. Yeah. Okay, fine. Sir, okay, was. Yeah. I never get into that kind of thing. I have a great respect for everything that is good. A music system is as good as its ambassadors. That, of course, I even now mention about the age span and all that. There are some stats about that, but we need to see why. See, that's what mechanics of music we need to get into. Okay, thank you all very much, and thank you, Mr. RK, for this wonderful session. Thank you, Dr. Ramchand, for adding your weight to this. Thank you.